Hey guys, so behind us we have a very important car. So I'm not sure if you guys have been watching the Germany vlogs, but we rented a brand new BMW M5 while we were there. That car is one of the more important cars of our day, one of the more popular cars of our day, but the car behind me is where it all started. This is the E28 BMW M5. Let me tell you why it's so special. So clearly, as you can tell, this is an older M5. This is a 1988, so it's the first M5, and it has a design kind of from the E30 and the E24, the cars that we more often see from this era. But today we're going to go for a drive in this, and I'm going to tell you why this car is probably the most important car of them all. Okay, so here we are in the E28 BMW M5. So up until today, I have only really driven the most recent two versions of the M5s, which both had twin turbo V8s, both had a ton of power and were insanely fast in a straight line. If you guys remember, in the Europe vlogs from about 2 weeks ago, we picked up the GT4RS and we had a brand new M5 rental, and I'm not gonna lie to you, that M5 was faster than the GT4RS. Now, that whole trend of M5s or sedans being faster than modern sports cars kind of started with this car. What happened with this car is, before this, BMW M made the iconic BMW M1 supercar, and then they decided to put that engine into your regular kind of everyday sedan. As a result of that, this was born. This is the E28 M5, and in Europe it got a little bit more power than here and was a little bit lighter and less bulky, but in Europe it had about 286 horsepower. Here it has about 256 horsepower and is a little bit heavier. Now, in modern standards, that does not sound like a lot. But back in the day, you know, the Ferraris of the time, the 308s, the 328s, they were in the 200 horsepower as well. So now you have your typical four-door car with a supercar engine and supercar performance. We're very used to that today. Today, every four-door car has got some sort of performance version where you get 600 horsepower and you'll be able to take a Ferrari off the line. That didn't exist before this car. All of those cars, the E63s, the RS6s, they all have this car to thank for. This car made it so you don't have to buy two cars. You can have your everyday car also be your fun car rather than have to buy kind of a weekend car. Now, what that did is it made it a lot more affordable to be a car enthusiast, because up until now, if you wanted to enjoy your own car, you would kind of have to be able to afford two cars, because obviously if you buy something like a Ferrari 308 or even any Porsche 911, you're not going to drive that to work, you're not going to drive that in the winter, you're not going to use it for everyday stuff. But then this came along, you get the same performance, but you keep the practicality of your everyday car. I mean, this car, if you look inside, there's so much room in the back, ton of room in the front, big trunk. It's pretty fuel efficient, you know, it's a 3.5 straight six, and you kind of don't get any of the drawbacks. Because of this, the M Performance division was well loved, because now you can have fun on your way to work. You can have fun pretty much at any moment while driving. And the reason this car is so important is it affected everything. Now, after that, you had Audi RS2, you had AMG start coming up, to the point where now even Cadillacs have the V versions of cars. And if you're a car enthusiast, any regular car will have a version for you. So I drove a new M5 pretty recently, so I can compare it very nicely. So this car isn't so much about like crazy power and just top speed. This car is not overly fast. It's faster than an E30 M3. That car was very slow, but this car focuses more on being an engaging driving experience. Rather than just having performance figures on paper that are impressive, this car was more about just making you feel excited as you drive. The gearbox is, you know, it's not the shortest, it's not the best for performance, but you know, it's like a long throw, but it's a fun long throw. Like, it makes you really think like you're working for the performance. The handling is not overly stiff. It's not really stiff at all, but it's not too like wobbly. So now you have a car that kind of feels fun and maneuverable, but you still get the comfort. And you know, I could do a long road trip in this car because the ride is so smooth, but if I want to just quickly throw it into a turn the wheel a little bit, the car will go. You know, there's a video of Chris Harris, I think he had one back in the day, he's just drifting this car around corners like crazy. And obviously that was a European version, but you can throw this car around pretty nicely. We are getting off the highway. Let's see if we can enjoy this car a little bit more on some like country roads. But man, this car is so much more engaging than your modern kind of performance sedans. There's no computers, there's nothing really helping you too much. Not that this car is scary or anything and you would need help, but it just so much more rewarding driving this car than a modern sedan that you feel like anybody could drive just as fast as you. And with this car, you don't really care about driving fast. You just care about driving. Now, what I really like about this car is recently I got to drive an E30 M3 probably about 2,500 kilometers in a weekend. I love the car. It was so much fun to drive, but the one thing is the engine was just like, it had no power, you know, like you really had to rev it out and work based off momentum to get any type of speed, which sometimes can be fun and rewarding, but sometimes you're going to be able to just put your foot down and have the power delivered to you, which this car has. So this is a nice combination where you get kind of the similar designs to the E30, the E24s, you know, probably BMW's prime days. The reason why people love BMWs is because of this era. So you get that, you get the cool old school interior that kind of doesn't have screens or anything. Obviously it's aging pretty nicely, but you also have some power, you know, close to 300 horsepower is not bad at all, even in modern standards. And you just get that kind of perfect combination of everything. And honestly, if you maintain these cars, I don't see why you can't just use this a daily. There's so much space in this car. It's practical. This one's a very nice example, to be fair. This is under 70,000 miles, which if you kind of calculate it is like 3,000 miles a year since the car came out, maybe less, 3,000 kilometers a year since the car came out, maybe less. But the car feels perfect. Like there's nothing wrong in the car at all. Everything is like 100%. Everything feels perfect. Unfortunately, this is the US spec though, which is still a fun car, but if it was a Euro spec, we'd have 30 more horsepower. We wouldn't have those rubber bumpers on the front and the back, which kind of gives this car a more bulky and big look. I mean, this car's not a big car, but it looks pretty big because of the kind of extensions on the bumper on both sides. Driving this car in North America is something actually pretty special because the car only came to North America in 1988. It only came in black, and only about 1,200 units, I believe, came to North America in total. So this is one of the more rare regular production M cars you could buy. It's the first one. It's kind of the originator of it all. And that's why I think this car is so special. This car started a trend where most sports cars we see today are the AMG versions, the M versions, the performance versions of regular cars. And this car started it all. If it wasn't for this car, we wouldn't have any of that. Who knows what the car culture would have looked like. Maybe another car would have come up with the idea, maybe it wouldn't have, but this is going to go down in history as one of the most important cars ever made.